Imagine a woman in a quiet hospice room. A woman who hadn't spoken in years suddenly looked up, smiled, and called her daughter by name. Her voice was clear. Her eyes were focused. For 5 radiant minutes, it was as if the dementia that had stolen her had never existed. Then, just as gently, she slipped away. Her final words were, "I remember everything." For families, these moments feel like miracles. For neurologists, they pose a problem. How can memory, language, and self-awareness return in a brain devastated by disease? If the neural networks are gone, what's doing the remembering? There's a name for this: terminal lucidity. And it's not as rare as we once thought. Across hospices and hospitals, similar stories are being quietly documented. Stories of patients with advanced Alzheimer's or massive brain injuries suddenly regaining full lucidity just before death. But these aren't the only anomalies challenging the idea that consciousness is confined to the brain. Imagine this: doctors surgically disconnect the 2 halves of a person's brain, severing the bridge that lets them communicate. According to logic, there should now be 2 separate minds. But when the patient is asked who they are, they still say, "I'm just me." No split, no confusion, just one self, whole and intact. Then consider this: a woman under deep anesthesia with no detectable brain activity. Later, she describes the surgical tools used on her, down to their shape and sound. And at the edge of death, when everything should be shutting down, some brains ignite with a sudden surge of high-frequency gamma waves. Not a flicker of fading, but a burst of vivid, synchronized awareness. Each case by itself is strange. Taken together, they begin to whisper of a deeper mystery, one that science is just beginning to touch. This is not a video about proving the existence of a soul. It's about paying attention to the questions that linger after the evidence has spoken. If terminal lucidity can arise in a broken brain, if split brain patients still feel whole, if awareness sometimes outlives the flatline, then maybe consciousness is not produced by the brain at all. Maybe the brain is more like a receiver than a generator, tuning into something it doesn't create, only channels. On this channel, we don't claim answers. We like to explore the possibilities, and we trust your own sense of truth to guide you through them. If you're someone who senses there's more than neurons and chemicals to who we are, stay till the end, because this journey might not give you certainty. It might give you something far better, a glimpse of what you've always known, just beneath the surface. Subscribe. They were told he was long gone, advanced Alzheimer's. He had no recognition and no speech. For 2 years, he stared past his family like they were strangers. But on the night before his death, something changed. He sat up, smiled, took his daughter's hand and said, "You came back." He asked about her children by name. Then he whispered, "I've been waiting." Hours later, he passed. Moments like this are more common than you think. They've been quietly documented for over 2 centuries. German psychiatrist Michael Nahm, among others, has compiled dozens of cases, many witnessed by nurses, hospice staff, and family, where individuals with severe brain damage briefly regain memory, personality, and clarity in their final hours. They speak of long-lost loved ones. They recount childhood details. Some even apologize for things they said decades earlier. Modern hospice reviews confirm this isn't anecdotal drift. These episodes, called terminal lucidity, are real, observed, and still unexplained. Here lies the paradox. Memory, language, and personality are understood to depend on complex neural structures. In advanced dementia, these structures are deteriorated beyond function. The brain, from a materialist standpoint, should not be capable of producing such clarity, and yet, it does. One study published in the Journal of Alzheimer's Disease described lucid episodes in deeply forgetful patients that defy standard neurological timelines. Families described it as watching someone come back from nowhere. Care workers report it more often than many realize, but hesitate to speak, fearing dismissal or disbelief. The scientific community is split. Some propose a last-minute neurochemical surge. Others suggest fragments of memory circuits briefly reconnect. But these are speculations, not conclusions. There is no model, no measurable brain pattern. that currently accounts for how such coherence emerges from decay. And this raises a deeper question. If the brain is no longer functioning in the way we believe necessary for consciousness, then what is operating in those final lucid moments? It's not just a medical mystery, it's a spiritual rupture. Because if awareness can rise from ruins, then perhaps it was never truly inside those ruins to begin with. To witness terminal lucidity is to glimpse something we rarely talk about in science: the possibility that consciousness isn't strictly local, that it can emerge when it shouldn't, that it may not belong to the brain, but move through it, temporarily, conditionally, and finally, freely. This is only the first crack in the story we've told about the mind, and the next one goes straight to the heart of what makes you you. In the 1960s, surgeons began severing the corpus callosum, the thick bridge connecting the two hemispheres of the brain, to relieve severe epilepsy. What followed were some of the most unsettling discoveries in neuroscience. In one experiment, a patient was shown a word only to the left visual field, processed by the right hemisphere. When asked what he saw, he said, "Nothing." But when handed a pencil with his left hand, he wrote the correct word. The language centers in the left hemisphere didn't see it, but something did. Researchers like Roger Sperry and Michael Gazzaniga began to suspect that each hemisphere had its own stream of consciousness. One brain, two minds. In some cases, patients even seemed to contradict themselves, one hand buttoning a shirt while the other unbuttoned it. The media called it a split self. Philosophy reeled. Were we ever truly whole? But decades later, something unexpected emerged. A 2017 study at the University of Amsterdam revisited patients who had undergone full callosotomies. Strangely, many described no internal division at all. They felt like a unified I. When asked questions involving either hemisphere, they responded consistently, introspectively, without confusion. How is this possible? If the bridge between hemispheres is gone, what allows the self to remain intact? Some scientists proposed cross-cueing, a kind of covert internal signaling between hemispheres through subtle body movements. Others suggest attentional mechanisms fill the gap, creating a seamless narrative. But a growing minority asks something more radical. What if consciousness isn't produced by brain parts at all? What if the sense of I doesn't live in the brain, but interfaces through it? Like light split by a prism, maybe awareness expresses itself through separate channels, but originates from somewhere whole. The left hand may not know what the right hand is doing, but something beyond the hands still sees the entire gesture. These findings fracture the old materialist image of consciousness as just the sum of neural modules, because when the modules are divided, the experience remains whole. We're forced to consider that unity might be fundamental, not manufactured. The mirror may crack, but somehow the reflection remains. And if that reflection isn't coming from inside the brain, then where is it looking from? At 10:53 a.m., her heart stopped. The EEG was flat. The surgical tools were ready. This woman was placed into hypothermic cardiac arrest, a state of clinical death. Blood drained from her brain. No electrical activity, no measurable consciousness. And yet, when she woke, she described things she couldn't have seen. The appearance of the bone saw, a comment made by a nurse, the shape of the surgical tool, all later confirmed. This wasn't a dream. It wasn't a vague feeling. It was precise perception, while medically she had no brain function to perceive anything. Cases like Pamela's have haunted the edges of science for decades. Most are brushed off as hallucinations, vivid projections from a dying brain. But then came the AWARE study. Led by critical care physician Sam Parnia, this multinational research project tracked cardiac arrest patients in hospitals, placing visual targets in operating rooms, only visible from above. The goal? To test whether patients reporting near-death experiences could recall verifiable details that occurred while they were clinically unconscious. In the first AWARE study, over 2,000 patients were observed. One man, whose heart had stopped for 3 minutes, accurately described the resuscitation scene in detail, timing the beeps of the machine, recounting the actions of the medical staff. His brain showed no activity during that window, yet he saw. This phenomenon is known as veridical perception. perceiving real events while unconscious. And though rare, it's rigorously documented in a handful of cases worldwide. Skeptics argue these moments are constructed after the fact, that oxygen deprivation, stress-induced chemicals, or endogenous DMT create hallucinations misremembered as real. But these theories fall short when the memories match objective events, down to tools, conversations, or hidden visual cues, witnessed during documented flatline states. So what is consciousness doing when the brain has gone quiet? This isn't about tunnels of light or meeting ancestors. It's not about belief systems. It's about moments when awareness seems to persist outside measurable biology. And those moments are verified, not imagined. To even consider this possibility is to question a core assumption, that consciousness is generated by electrical activity in the brain. Because if that's true, then clinical death should be the end of experience. But something keeps watching. It's like the lights go out in the house, and yet someone is still looking through the windows. Not metaphorically, actually perceiving, describing what no brain should be able to. These cases remain rare, but rarity does not mean insignificance. Sometimes it's the exceptions that open the door we didn't know was there. And through that door is the question most are afraid to ask. What if we've been locating awareness in the wrong place entirely? At the moment of death, the brain should be shutting down, fading, fragmenting, dissolving into silence. But in some studies, something else happens. In 2013, a team led by neuroscientist Jimo Borjigin observed something unexpected in dying rats. After cardiac arrest, the rats' brains surged with synchronized gamma activity, high-frequency waves typically associated with heightened perception, conscious awareness, even spiritual states. The burst lasted for about 30 seconds after the heart stopped. It was not chaotic. It was organized, focused, and alive. Later human studies suggested similar patterns, short-lived, intense gamma coherence just before full brain inactivity, like a final flare, a signal before the silence. What does this mean? Some argue it's the brain's last stand, a final electrical gasp. Others see something stranger. The brain may not just be failing, but also transitioning. Is not like it is shutting down, but more like it's tuning out. This is where quantum theories of consciousness come in as possible bridges between what we see and what we can't yet explain. Physicist Roger Penrose and anesthesiologist Stuart Hameroff proposed that consciousness may arise not from the large-scale structure of the brain, but from quantum processes within microtubules, tiny structures inside neurons. Their theory, OR, suggests that these subatomic events aren't bound by classical physics. They may operate beyond time, beyond space. Quantum biology has shown that such coherence can exist in warm, wet systems, like bird navigation or photosynthesis. Why not consciousness? Skeptics call it wishful speculation. They point out the fragility of quantum states. But Hameroff counters that anesthetics, chemicals that switch off consciousness, act precisely on microtubules. And no one knows exactly why they work. We only know that when they do, awareness vanishes. So maybe the brain is more than a processor. It's an interface, a quantum threshold. And at the edge of death, when the interface dissolves, what if consciousness isn't extinguished, but released? Imagine a radio that hums, then spikes with static, only to fall silent as the signal leaves the device. The static isn't noise. It's the residue of departure. These gamma surges and quantum theories don't give us certainty. They give us possibility, a crack in the wall. And on the other side, something ancient is waiting to be remembered. Let's pause. We've seen memory emerge from a ruined brain, unity from a severed self, awareness from clinical death, coherence at the edge of decay. Each moment cracks the story that the mind is simply what the brain does. Some say we must reframe entirely, not brain as mind, but brain as translator, a tuning device for something not localized in tissue, but everywhere, like a field. In physics, a field isn't something mystical. It's foundational. A field exists across space, invisible but present, activated when something interacts with it. Gravity is a field. So is magnetism. Could consciousness be one too? Imagine your brain as a radio. Different frequencies, different thoughts. The hardware affects what you hear, but the music is not inside the machine. This idea isn't new. William James, Carl Jung, and contemporary thinkers like Bernardo Kastrup have all asked, what if mind is fundamental and the brain filters it, reduces it for survival? This doesn't mean there's no connection between brain and mind. It means the connection may be misunderstood, like confusing the light bulb with the electricity, and the implications ripple. If mind is non-local, death may not be an end, but a change in channel. Meditation becomes more than calming the brain. It becomes a way to listen for signal beyond it. Identity expands from I am my thoughts to I am what notices thought arise. Even science itself changes. Instead of only measuring brainwaves, we might ask, what's listening between them? Still, none of this is a claim of truth. It's a lens, one that might make sense of your strangest experience, that moment you felt something outside yourself looking in, the sudden knowing, the impossible dream, the voice without sound. So here's a gentle invitation. Before you move to the conclusion, try this. Sit back, close your eyes, and notice the space before a thought arrives. That quiet is not blank. It's aware. What if that awareness isn't in you, but is you? What if it always has been? We've been told the brain is the seat of self, but maybe the brain is just the window, and the mind is the sky beyond it. All our lives, we're taught to look inward, to the brain, to the body, for who we are. But maybe we've been facing the wrong direction. Maybe what you are isn't hidden inside folds of matter, but spread across the stillness between thoughts. Maybe it isn't located, but listening. Because if memory can awaken from ruin, if a single self can survive a split brain, if vision can pierce death's veil, and if consciousness blooms in the final flicker of a failing brain, then the truth is far more mysterious than biology admits. Not because it's supernatural, but because it might be more natural than we've been allowed to see. And here's the shift. You don't need to believe in anything. You only need to wonder what remains when everything you thought you were disappears. When the brain is silent, when thought dissolves, when you are no longer trying to be aware, yet something remains aware of that. The field, the witness, the you before the name. This is not the end of inquiry. It's the soft beginning of something else. Something older than belief. Something waiting, always, just behind your eyes. So now, ask yourself, if mind is not confined to matter, where is it? And if awareness is not yours to own, then who is asking the question? You don't need to answer. You only need to stay close to the asking. If this stirred something in you, please subscribe. There's more waiting in the silence we share. And when you're ready to keep walking deeper, the next video is already listening. Thanks for watching.